and I'm absolutely delighted and thrilled to have at the other end of the telephone Mr. Paul Zone of Man to Man. Paul, how are you?
I'm good. Thank you for having me on the show.
It's my privilege and pleasure, my friend. First of all, thank you very much for taking time out of your busy schedule to talk to us. So I've just got a few questions to ask you, if you're okay with that. First of all,
okay.
Where are you right now, and what are you getting up to?
Right now, I'm in Hollywood, California, which is a little bit different from New York. I spend a lot of time in New York City and also on the West Coast in Hollywood, California. Mm-hmm. So I'm out here now, and it's just getting ready for the summer and not really doing much. And the weather out here in Hollywood is just beautiful.
When I was 13, 14, I walked into a local record shop in Falkirk, and I walked in and I says, okay, what's the new releases this week? And the chap behind the counter says, you'll like this. And he put on a song called Male Stripper. This was about September 1986. I was 14 years old, and it blew me away. This brilliant drum intro. It was the UK mix, the drum intro, then the bass line, and then you heard that synthesizer riff, and then that immortal line, I was a male stripper in a go-go bar, and I was like, I've got to have this. So what I want to ask you about is Male Stripper. How did the idea for that song come about?
Well, actually, we had that song very early on, probably in 1983. We did an original demo of that song with the producer Bobby Orlando, Bobby O.
Yeah, Bobby O.
And he was working with Divine and some bands called the Flirts, and and also his solo stuff as well.
Yep.
Now, we had known Bobby O since the punk days. Bobby O produced the Fast first record in 1976.
Right.
So we had known when Mickey and I, my brother, when we decided to start doing electronic music, we said Bobby was starting to get pretty popular in 1982, 83.
Yep.
So we gave him a call because we were friends, and we said, we're going to not be a rock and roll band anymore, and we wanted to do something a little bit different. And we went into the studio with him, and we started doing some electronic demos, and Male Stripper actually was one of them. And we never released it, and it just stayed with us for a couple of more years until we really started getting a little bit better in doing our own recordings and doing our own sort of production. So basically in 1975, we met up with producer Man Parrish, who had a hit record called Hip Hop Bebop. And we got together with him and went in and did a recording of Male Stripper, which was actually the second time we had recorded the song. So, of course, it sounded a lot different than the original demo of it. But basically, it was the same song, same feel. But we wanted to make something that was a little more different than typical disco music or typical, high energy. The term and the sound were just being started. But we always felt that Male Stripper was a production that really sounded a lot different than a lot of the other typical dance music that was around then. It was a little dirtier. It was a little bit more sparse and not so traditional when it came to the vocal style and what you would usually hear in a club or on the radio. So we knew that we had an edge, and it was actually our second single, because Man to Man had made a single before that also, which was pretty popular. Not in Europe, though. It was popular in America and down in Mexico and South America. But Male Stripper was our second record, and that really took off, especially on the UK and in Scotland. And then, of course, it did very well in 1986.
Well, I was just going to say that, and I mean, and what I remember at that time, I mean, I was just a teenager, and I was into the whole high energy thing. I loved Bob Orlando. I was a huge fan of Divine. I liked bands. I liked Sylvester, Patrick Cowley. They were all, these guys were all my heroes. You know, I mean, Patrick Cowley was an absolute genius with a synthesizer.
We were friends with Patrick. we were friends with Patrick Howley and Sylvester, and had known them from San Francisco.
Yeah.
So we had a connection with a lot of these people, even though we came from an earlier era of glam and punk.
Mm-hmm.
But you get to meet a lot of people and know a lot of different people.
Your Top of the Pops performance in 1987, which to me is one of the highlights of Top of the Pops. Can you remember anything about that? Now, for what I remember is there was yourself on stage and you had two dancers at the back of you. The chap on the left-hand side was a good dancer. The guy on the right-hand side dressed in the leather couldn't dance to save himself, let's be honest. He was
actually the person that was going to the person that was supposed to be the one on the right, he had a problem and couldn't get back to the UK,
right,
because he was someplace else in another city. So that was a last minute addition, and of course, it wasn't to our liking. But what are you going to do?
It was okay. It was, as I said, it was one of the highlights for me. Top of the Pops was a huge show, and it was one of the highlights. I mean, Gary Davis, who's now back on the radio doing an 80s show, introduced John, and he said this was one of the hottest disco records around, and then that riff started, and I remember watching it and thinking, oh yes, turned it up loud, and my parents banging on the ceiling saying, turn that down. No chance. I mean, it was a fantastic moment. It was TV history as far as I'm concerned, because like I said, I was in it the whole high night. I loved it, and I thought it was fantastic, and that pretty much nailed me being a fan of Man to Man.
I know, but the record Male Stripper, basically, even though it was, by the end of 1986, it became the #1 club record throughout the UK and Scotland. And it was definitely the biggest record around, and it didn't hit the pop charts until March of 1987, and that's when we did Top of the Pops. But the song, when it went commercial and did hit BBC One and the radio, it wasn't embraced as much as other pop songs.
No.
It was still considered kind of taboo, a little bit out on the edge. Seeing that it was embraced so strongly by the gay community, it had a stereotype to it. So it wasn't that it's not like the whole country was behind it and loved it so much, especially a lot of the radio and television stations. A lot of the radio stations didn't even want to say the name Male Stripper. Yeah. They would say, here's Man to Man with that special song, or they would say something like that because they thought it was, a little bit dirty or had something about it. And the way we were treated on Top of the Pops when we went and did the filming, I felt that I wasn't really treated very nicely by the production and by the people that were there. They weren't really talking to me about the filming of it. Meanwhile, I saw them with all of the other bands that happened to be on that same evening, and they had definitely a nicer rapport with them than they did with me. Yeah. And I think it was because they were just a little bit more standoffish about the song and about me and about that it was such an iconic gay anthem. So I think that they just, were held back a little. But I know Top of the Pops has that reputation because I know Frankie Goes to Hollywood had the same kind of reactions when they were popular. Yep. And, when something different comes around that really grabs the mainstream, even though it's popular in the mainstream, there's still a lot of people that are held back by it and put their hands up like, well, I don't really know if I'm going to support something like this. Yeah. But for some reason it's commercial and it's going to do good. So I really, there was a love-hate relationship, even though it was a very popular record.
So what does the future hold for Paul Zone in 2008? What have you got planned for the rest of the year? Anything special?
Well, basically, I worked on the book, so I'm promoting that, and I go around doing a lot of gallery exhibitions with the photos. And I haven't been to the UK, and I haven't been to Scotland, but I am waiting for someone to invite me. So if anyone is listening, they could go to the Facebook page or try to find me somewhere and invite me, because I'd love to bring all of these photos there. And now I'm working on a documentary for the book, which basically talks about all of this. And there's a lot of people that have been interviewed for it, Debbie Harry, and a lot of New York musicians, a lot of people that were in the music business back in the punk day, members of Suicide and the Cars and Cheap Trick, and all of the New York bands are interviewed in it. So the book has a lot to do with New York and how it transformed from glam to the punk era. So it doesn't really, the photos aren't anything in the 80s or high energy, but the whole commentary and the whole writing goes all the way through the 70s and the 80s, and it's just a journey of how Man to Man got started, and basically what that held for the music. And it's pretty interesting. So this is what I'm working on right now.
The last question I wanted to ask you: if you could work with any artist, who would it be?
When Male Stripper did become a hit, there were quite a few producers and artists that did want to work with Man to Man, but scheduling was kind of hard as well. And we always wanted to, do a record with Giorgio Moroder. Yeah. And we thought that would have been really, really fun, because that was something that we really liked. We really liked that Sparks album that they did in 1980
Absolutely.
With Giorgio, and that was really great.
So, Paul, thank you very, very much for talking to us today. It's been an absolute pleasure. You're one of my heroes. As I said, Male Stripper is in my top 10 all-time favourite songs. Thank you very, very much for talking to us. It's much appreciated. I know you're a busy man, so I'll let you get on. It's 11:30 your time, local time in LA?
Yeah, it's early. Actually, they're Hollywood, Los Angeles is having their Gay Pride celebration today.
Yep. I saw a couple of Twitter feeds on that, and it looks amazing. I've been to New York. I've visited New York, and the place blew me away. But other than New York, I think LA would be the next place I'd want to go. I'd want to go to see Venice Beach and go visit the Capitol Records building and all those kind of things. Bring out the tourist in me. But again, thank you very, very much, my friend, and I hope you have a great rest of 2000. I don't know what to say to you. I'm so humbled to be talking to you. It's another wee tick off the bucket list. I've spoken to one of my heroes on the radio. Fantastic. Paul, thank you very, very much.